And now joining us on the WHIP pregame show, all via TuneIn.com, live from Hartford, Connecticut, inside the XL Center, is Mike Jensen from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Mike, great to see you. Thanks for a few minutes.
Hey, thanks for having me, Zach.
Well, let's take a look at the big story is obviously Jaylen Bond. What do you expect out of Bond today? I know he's questionable right now, and if he isn't able to be 75, 80%, there's some big nightmare matchups going up against Marcus Kennedy and Yannick Moreira.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Kennedy's been a matchup nightmare for him, you know, with everybody healthy, so, or the players who have played. So it's a big question. So the question is minutes. I don't know if it's quality of play, how much you can get some minutes out of him. It may be that he's not fully ready to go with that matchup. Maybe he matches up against somebody else. Obi gets more of those minutes. We'll see the mix and match on that one, because I agree with you. That's the crucial matchup.
And when we look at the backcourt, Mike, you have, very good guards in Will Cummings and Nick Moore going up against each other, two guys who are on the American Athletic Conference first team. It's a hell of a matchup. Yeah, and it was advantage Moore last time in Dallas, so we'll see. I mean, I would have said they did a great job on Moore in Philadelphia until he killed him at the end, obviously. Mm-hmm. So he's that kind of player, too, where you can get him for 38 and he can still beat you.
So if Bond can't go today, we saw Watson and Obi play well down the stretch. How much confidence can the Owls have in those guys?
Well, I think plenty, because I think Obi might be the best kind of athlete to go up against Marcus Kennedy. I mean, if he can stay out of foul trouble himself, just his length and his ability to get up in the air, I like that as a defensive matchup, even maybe more than Jaylen. But it's a good question. I think the same thing with Watson. You want minutes out of him. You don't, it's not points, it's not rebounds. It's protecting the rim for as many minutes as you can get.
Mike Jensen is our guest right here on the pregame show. We're getting you ready for the semifinal of the American Athletic Conference between Temple and SMU. And, Mike, you take a look at when Temple played this SMU team the last two times. They blew a 13 and also a 10-point lead. How do they get things going in the second half and finish off these games? Because SMU is an exceptional basketball team in the final 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I think that's where it comes back to the guard play. You're going to tell me how Morgan and DeCozy, how they're shooting if the ball's going in a little bit. I mean, Josh Brown is just giving them productive minutes time after time. It's usually, to me, is sort of a turning point when he gets in the game. But it's to me, it's on those other guys to see if they can win their matchups.
Does Daniel Dingle, how big of a factor does he play in this game? Because he's been that guy. He may not be the biggest guy in the world, but he does give you some good defensive minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, he was terrific yesterday. To me, I really like Dingle. I mean, the problem to me overall is Dingle's position almost doesn't exist in college basketball these days.
Right.
You want three quick guards on the court, and he's a forward, but he's not a big, powerful inside post player. So, you need the right matchups for him to be on the court, but then when you get those matchups, he's effective.
Mike Jensen of the Philadelphia Inquirer is our guest right now on the WHIP pregame show. Temple and SMU tip it up in the semifinals at 3 p.m. And we know what Will Cummings is going to give Temple. He's been superb. He was excellent down the stretch yesterday in that quarterfinal matchup against Memphis, going 10 of 10 from the line in the second half. But how important is it for Temple to get that secondary scoring from guys like Jesse Morgan and Quentin DeCozy?
I think that will determine the game, I think.
Yeah.
I really do. I think, it's just no coincidence that when one or both of those guys gets going, it seems to add a little bit to the defense. And then that's when, Temple is a really tough team. That's the tough Temple team. The opposite, they can start to be a little bit of a mess.
Yeah, now Larry Brown on the sidelines for SMU. He's kind of brought back this program over the last 2 years. You've covered sports in Philadelphia for so long. Any stories with Larry Brown over the years?
I went down to, here's the story with Larry Brown. I went to cover a practice at Temple, at the Sixers early in Iverson's tenure, and I was just filling in on the beat, and they listed, and Larry mentioned Iverson didn't practice because of a sprained ankle, and I was as green as could be, just asked, so what's wrong with Iverson's ankle? And Larry, and I told him about this later, I said, Larry just looked at me and looked at the rest of the beat writers. It's like, who is this schmo? Will you guys coach him up? And he didn't say anything because he couldn't give everybody a quote.
Right.
He couldn't say, who are you? What are you?
Yeah.
And everyone would have run with it. He just gave a look, and it was priceless.
And I was following you on Twitter, and I saw you tweeted something out because the old Christian Laettner documentary is coming out. You were offered a face value ticket to that basketball game and did not attend. What was going wrong with you at that time of your life?
And as I tweeted the next time, sports writers, we don't pay for tickets. If we're not working,
That's true.
we're not
There you
going.
go. Need a credential, right?
That's the deal. And I was like, oh, damn, for all this time. So absolutely, that's the deal. I wasn't working the game. It was as simple as that. Did I know it was going to be the greatest college basketball game in history? Maybe I would have forked over the $40 to sit the
40
top
bucks.
of the spectrum. I don't know what it was.
That's a bargain.
Back in the day, that was a lot of money, right?
Probably what it was.
Yeah. So real quickly, before we let Mike Jensen run from the Philadelphia Inquirer, we know that we're sitting right next to the band today. You've covered a lot of games. Any advice of sitting next to a band while working a basketball game?
Yeah, move.
One last question. Yesterday, 500 wins for Coach Dunphy. They picked up their 23rd win of the season, but a lot of people are still speculating that if Temple doesn't win here today, they could be out of March Madness. What do you think of that?
Honestly, I look at that stuff pretty closely. I'm not buying it. I will be really, really surprised. I go toward the Lenardi model of where they stand, where he's got them right now out of Dayton with one team to spare, more than the Jerry Palm has them out of the tournament.
Yeah.
Last team out. And I think Lenardi's rationale is correct, that you are allowed to look at Jesse Morgan and Coleman did not play. You are allowed to look at that stuff. I thought it was just injuries. He said, no, you're allowed to look at. They were a different team.
Lost
there.
2 games
so that,
all year with their full lineup.
Yeah. But they did lose those games.
Right.
Yeah.
So those were big games.
Yeah.
I mean, if they had won one of those games, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. Then the Cummings injury counts more, the home games against SMU and Tulsa. But when they didn't win them on the road, that sort of negates that part of it. So, I mean, they'll be nervous tomorrow. I mean, I wouldn't bet my house on it, but I wrote in the paper. I mean, I think they are now in, and I'm not buying. Jerry Palm has, and he's looking at this stuff a lot
He
more
said
than
they
I
had
am.
to win the tournament to get in.
Well,
Jerry Palm.
Yeah, he's wrong.
I agree.
No, he's just
There's
wrong
no
on that
question
one.
about that.
He's wrong. I mean, if they win today, they're in. But also, he's got Tulsa ahead of them, and here's why I'm not buying it. Tulsa lost to a Division II team, and they didn't lose to the Division II national champions. They lost to a team that was either 15-14 or 15-13 in Division II.
Yeah.
I mean, that's worth a couple of losses. And Tulsa, I think they're playing a play-in game today. I think they're in if they win. And if they had beaten Temple 3 times, then there's no way Temple could be in ahead of them. If they were playing tomorrow. If it was Tulsa and Temple today in a semi, that would have been a play-in game for both of them, I think.
Last one, I just want to get your take on these 2 things. We were talking to Mike Oresco earlier in the week, and the topic of Philadelphia possibly being a host city and the AAC tournament came up. Would you like to see Philadelphia maybe get this AAC tournament? And how about the Palestra? I know it's small, but they said they maybe consider it.
I think they looked at it. I think here's their problem. Wells Fargo, a little too big. Palestra, a little too small. I love it, and my argument is always it's a basketball place. People don't care about parking and meeting rooms. They'll come in there, they'll deal, it'll be great. They honestly, I think Temple is perfect size-wise, but
location-wise.
No, not even. The problem is perception-wise. When you go to a campus site, you're perceived as small time. Mm-hmm. I mean, no one else. So that's why they like to be in the city arenas. That's why we're in Hartford and we're not in stores or on campus. In Memphis, that was a different deal. So I think that's the issue. I think they really like Philadelphia, and I bet as they move around, I think they're worried about Orlando, that they'll draw enough people. I mean, they're placing a bet that people will get on a plane and say, let's go to Florida in March.
Why not in March, yeah.
And it'll work, but will it work enough? And I think Philadelphia will get a rotation. I'm just not sure where. It's like not too hot, not too cold. What's the right venue in Philadelphia?
Imagine all of the media members trying to work in the Palestra in that small room.
Well, they used to do it in the A10, and they get around. But you have Waitman Hall attached to it. They actually have an entire building that they can devote to it next door. So it's not as crazy as it seems.
Yeah.
Well, we hear the band playing, and your advice was moved, so we'll kick you on out of here. Mike Jensen, we appreciate a few minutes.
That.
All right. Thanks so much, Mike. We We appreciate it. Mike Jensen from the Philadelphia Inquirer joining us right here on WHIP. It is the pregame show. We're about 10 minutes and 30 seconds out from tip. What we'll do right now is we'll take our first commercial break of the day, and we'll be back right after these short messages from the XL Center in Hartford, Connecticut.